I would like to say a few words about how my work, which mainly revolves around literary criticism, can also, on some level, intersect with the women's movement in Iran. Before going any further, I want to acknowledge the great debts I have to women whose field is either history, political science, and who have written extensively on women's movement in Iran from either a political or historical perspective. Mine, as you know, always intersects with literary production. As a woman who has witnessed successive political crises in her country of birth, from the 1953 coup and the end of 2,500 years of dynastic rule to the 1979 revolution, the hostage crisis, the 1980s cultural revolution, from the imprisonment of my family members and friends, to the 8-year bloody war with Iraq, rigged elections, and massive demonstrations. I have often asked myself, would the course of Iranian history have been different if women had served as political leaders of my country? History offers no definitive answer to such exasperated, impatient questions. But be that as it may, there is also another story. There is another side to the story. It is the heroic story of the Iranian people's struggle for freedom and democracy, for human rights and human dignity, for due process of law and civil liberties. In a country where literature is a sacred scripture, in a land where people grow up kissing books, it should not surprise us if writers and poets have been deeply involved in this inspiring history of resistance and resilience. It is here in this literature that we find the kind of history unavailable in history books. It is here in this literature that the vibrancy of a country defining, undefining, and redefining itself is captured with respect for truth and nuance. It is here in this literature that the dream of the Iranian people for democracy is kept alive for the world to see. Although many of the experiences described are harrowing, and at times the writing leads with grief and anguish and sorrow, the luminous tale of courage and endurance consoles the heart, lifts the soul, and promises kinder days ahead. Exceptions aside, however, the role of women writers and poets in this liberating movement has been mostly unexplored. While women have been acknowledged as literary figures, they have been mostly sidelined as political strategists and activists. Their distinct and significant contributions remain indeed unmapped for the most part. Why the exclusion, we might ask? Why this discursive segregation? Why the push to the margins of women? Why the relegation to footnotes when women writers generated ideas that reshaped not only gender relations in Iran, but contemporary history? Women writers took the struggle for democracy inside the home, in kitchens and bedrooms. They looked at gender inequity where it all begins, at home. They challenged traditional definitions of masculinity and femininity, power, authority, authorship. To borrow from Toni Morrison, one of my favorite writers, they emerged from their segregated spaces, going from the described and the imagined to the describer and the imaginer. These women democratized literature by integrating female voice and vision into a predominantly masculine literary tradition. For centuries, women's access to the public discourse, like the public arena, was curtailed in Iran. That's why women writers refused to stay in their proper place and assigned roles. That's why their struggle should be considered one of the key markers, makers, and shapers of democracy and modernity in Iran. Women knew desegregation was central to their literary enterprise. They knew they had to trespass tall walls, borders, boundaries, and ancestral silences. To become a published writer or poet, Iranian women not only needed a room of their own and economic independence, as Virginia Woolf remarked in her groundbreaking work, A Room of One's Own, but also the freedom to leave that room and to return to it at will. Without such a right, a room turns into a prison cell. Aware of the restricted mobility of their body and their voice, women writers have been at the forefront of the search for an equitable society for all. From Tahireh Qurratul Ain, who risked life and limb to give body to her voice and voice to her body, to Zebra, the outspoken protagonist of Azarin Vandervliet Ulumi's delightful novel, Call Me Zebra, women have refused to stand still behind closed gates and suspended opportunities. They have ignored the warning, you don't belong here. If Tahireh went from door to door, street to street, city to city, Zebra traveled the globe. They, Tahireh and Vandervliet Ulumi, like their female literary colleagues, wanted to become the chroniclers of a presence asserted, a body inserted, a voice regained. In a country where women need the written permission of their male guardians to travel abroad, they turned literature into their freedom machines, their border-defying magic carpet. It is no exaggeration to claim that the reorganization of physical, social, and discursive spaces runs like a unifying thread through the work of female writers in the last 170 years in Iran. Please allow me to give you a couple of examples. In her novel, The Blue Locust, dedicated to Don Quixote و خاله شوکت, Shahrnush Parsipour writes, I was entering the depth of darkness, the deep of the sea. I felt cold. I was becoming an absence. I wanted warmth. I wanted love. I wanted light. I wanted presence. I screamed, why do you always keep me in the deep of the sea? Repeating the sentence, why do you keep me in the dark of the sea, 7 times in one paragraph, Parsipour adds, I was grieving. I wept. I felt I'm shrinking in myself. When I wanted to walk, I felt heavy. I could only take little steps. It was like I was limping, and one foot was shorter than the other. The refrain, why do you always keep me in the deep of the sea, is of course Parsipour's intertextual homage to Forough Farrokhzad and a line from her celebrated poem, Let Us Believe in the Dawn of the Cold Season, in which the poet demands inclusion and visibility. Why do you always keep me in the deep of the sea? Farrokhzad laments in this beautiful poem. I feel cold, and I despise these mother of pearl earrings. It is this violence of erasure that women writers have aimed to overcome with their boundary pushing and revolutionary work. It is this imposed absence, this forced disappearance they have rejected. It is like the visibility and the space Ralph Ellison demanded in the poignant opening lines of his seminal book, Invisible Man. Ellison writes, I am an invisible man. Understand, I'm invisible simply because you refuse to see me. The price women writers have paid for seeking voice, visibility, and mobility has been exorbitant. Tahireh Qurratu'l-Ain was executed at the age of 36. Parveen Ehtesami died of a mysterious fever at the age of 34. Forough Farrokhzad died in a car accident at the age of 32. Taj Saltaneh attempted suicide 3 times. Zandukht Shirazi died in her early 40s, a premature death caused by depression. Fatemeh Sayyah died of a heart attack at 45. Forough Farrokhzad, Mahshid Amirshahi, Goli Taraqi, Shahrnush Parsipur, and many others experienced depression, incarceration, or attempted suicide. Kobra Saidi, better known as Shahzad, endured imprisonment and institutionalization for 7 long years. Ghazaleh Alizadeh, at the height of her literary powers, hanged herself with colorful robes in Jawahir Dati. This catalog of depression, isolation, imprisonment, and attempted suicide, of early death and execution is wrenching. The road to desegregation has not been easy for women. Still, knowing but not fearing consequences, women have resisted exclusion. They have challenged the norms and conventions at every step and emerged as a vibrant catalyst of change. They have broken many glass ceilings, and I am convinced they are on the way to break the hardest and the highest one, that of national leadership. There is a rich vocabulary in the Persian language for male monarchs, but no official title exists for a female monarch, independent of her relationship with a man. Nor is there a title for the husband of a female monarch. The feminine counterpart of sultan is salite, a shrew, a domineering woman, a woman who, we are told, acts as the husband of her man. Although women have fought for socio-political participation for 170 years, they are still barred from the highest offices in the land. For instance, supreme leadership, membership in the powerful Expediency Council, and the Guardian Council. Although several women have nominated themselves as presidential candidates, 40 in the most recent election, they have been consistently and systematically disqualified from running. As usual, women writers are the harbingers of upcoming political trends, I believe. If earlier a world ruled by women was an unattainable dream for the heroine of the first major novel written by a woman, Simin Daneshvar's Savushun, the younger generations within the country and in diaspora are assuming the role of rulers and even prophets in their works. I must be king, even if I don't have a crown on my head, writes the female narrator of the exquisite novel Parandeh Man, My Bird, by Fariba Wafii. The young and sassy protagonist of Marjan Satrapi's masterpiece, graphic memoir, Persepolis, goes even further and declares herself the first female prophet in a long line of male predecessors. And in Negar Javadi's richly layered, taboo-bursting, semi-autobiographical novel, Disoriental, the pre-Islamic Iranian prophet, Zoroaster, is a girl. Iranian women have emerged as seasoned survivors and a formidable civic force to be reckoned with. And women writers have been at the forefront of this move. They offer a promising alternative to lead a country in swift decline out of its current crisis. In the words of Forough Farrokhzad, I will come, I will come, I will come. And the threshold will be filled with love. And at the threshold, I will greet all those who love, and the girl standing there at the threshold. Standing at the threshold of East and West, local and global, past and future, women writers and poets in Iran have produced a radically dissenting body of writing with a momentum never before experienced. We need to study this movement more, and we need to celebrate it further. Thank
you. Thank you very much for this wonderful talk and introduction. Let me remind our listeners that many of the female writers that Professor Milani referred to, we have had the good fortune of hosting at Stanford. And their programs are taped from Mahshida Amishahi to Goliya Taraqi to Ms. Parsipour. All three are past winners of our Beta Prize. Ms. Wafi has been with us, Javadi has been with us. All of these programs are there, and I strongly urge you to go back and watch them. You ended your talk with a repetitious referral to the concept of threshold. I know you've been working on this, and I don't want the audience to think this is just a passing word that gets repeated. Could you tell us a little bit about what your understanding of this genre is?
Sure. Thank you for asking this question, because threshold literature is something that I'm very passionate about these days. As you might know, I have in fact asked for a year of leave to be able to focus on this particular topic. I have always believed that at the intersection of opposites, marvels can be created. Now, sometimes negative things can happen. For instance, when a country is polarized and no one is willing to compromise and listen to the other side, the ramifications are negative. But it can also be a source of creativity and wonder. Let me give you a couple of examples. When sunlight and raining fall coexist, a rainbow is created, a bridge that connects heaven and earth. Our ancestors, in their infinite wisdom, called the break of dawn Gorgomish, wolf, sheep. When light and darkness coexist, the sun is born. I can give you many other such examples. But the reason I got interested in threshold literature was first because I saw its presence in the architecture of the writing of women. As you mentioned, the 5 lines that I read from Forough Farrokhzad's poem, I Will Greet the Sun Again, repeats the word threshold 4 times. And in all 5 of her poetry collection, she refers to threshold. And as you might recall, The House is Black also focuses on this architectural framework. Also, all my life in Iran, I remember that every time I had an important exam, every time I was traveling, every time something important was to happen, our mother will hold the Quran at the threshold, that Astane Dar, and we will walk under it. I remember I used to ask her, why here? Why can't we do it somewhere else in the house? But she insisted that it has to be at the threshold. Jews have something called mezuzah that they attach to the framework of the door. All of these made me very interested in the significance of what I call a third space. Of course, theoretically, I'm using the work of people like Van Gennep, people like Victor Turner, who have talked about liminality. And by the way, I was fascinated to find that even the word liminal is borrowed from Latin, and it means threshold. And you know, Homi Bhabha has, of course, from a post-colonial perspective, written extensively about third space. And Gloria Anzaldúa, in her book Borderland, La Frontera, has also discussed this issue both autobiographically and theoretically, talking about the borderlands. So for me, I think a new era is emerging in women's writing, both inside and outside the country. It's the first time, although overdue, that women are finding their way into anthologies of world literature. They're winning all sorts of awards, both inside Iran and outside the country. And I think what they're doing, like the threshold, which is at the intersection of inside and outside, past and future, safe and challenges, and all sorts of binary opposites, women are creating a kind of writing that transcends binary opposites while acknowledging their existence.
I absolutely know nothing about this theoretical framework. I've read a little Homi Bhabha, but not in this context, post-colonial. Is the threshold literature developed by women because they have essentially decided that they cannot break into that binary structure? They have given up on essentially making an egalitarian public space, and they're going into a separate space? Is it like a literally exile? You know, you can't fix your country, you go into exile. Is that what it is?
No, not at all. I think the beauty of this literature, this emerging genre, really, I see it as a subgenre of literary production. You know, to give examples of people inside, of course, Furugh Farrokhzad, who was an exile in her own country, of Simin Behbahani, who created the figure of the gypsy, who is also a liminal figure. You know, Simin Behbahani has written 16 exquisite and profound, profoundly philosophical poems about the gypsies. And she has identified with the gypsy. So it is a refusal to submit to either or proposition. It replaces the conjunction or with another conjunction and very short replacement of or with and makes a world of difference.
Well, I can spend the rest of my life actually conversing with you, as I've done part of my early life, but I know there are questions, and I think Roma is going to ask the questions that we have from our audience. I want to end by thanking you again for accepting our invitation. I've been inviting her for 2 years, and she has refused, and I have not given up. So thank you for accepting finally.
Thank you, Abbas.
Thank you. We do have several questions and comments coming in, and I just wanted to point out that the videos of past speakers that Professor Abbas Milani mentioned, we shared a link in our chat to a YouTube playlist that has several of those videos if you'd like to take a look back. So to get to our questions, one viewer writes, "Many thanks for your insightful talk, Professor Milani. I was wondering if you could refer to some similarities and discrepancies among the tropes prevalent in the literature produced by domestic women writers on the one hand, and those produced by women authors outside of Iran."
That's a wonderful question, a very complicated question, I have to say. As a student of women writers in Iran, I have to tell you that the issue of time is of the essence. So I will not be able to talk about all contemporary women writers, either inside or later on outside the country. But there is definitely a couple of themes that jump out regardless of time and regardless of the historic context. And that, of course, is the issue of censorship. As we know, censorship is a reality of life in Iran. It has been to different degrees, and to the best of my knowledge, most of our writers, both male and female, at some point in their lives and in their writings, have complained, have lamented this restriction on their freedom of expression and on the voyages of their imagination. So one of the first things for us to keep in mind when we talk about the wonderful, proud number of women who are now writing in diaspora and winning amazing awards, is that they're free to write about whatever their heart desires. The same cannot be said about women who are still writing inside the country.
Thank you. Their viewer writes, "In the future, can literature be a means of making a way for women to have more active participation in the public arena by creating a public persona of the politically active Iranian women?"
Yes, what a great question. I have always believed that women writers and poets in Iran have been prescient, have been able to predict the future. Maybe one of the reasons is that for the most part, they have been free from ideological perspectives. Let me give you one example. I believe the first person who predicted the 1979 revolution is Farzaneh. I don't know of any other writer, male or female, poet, male or female, who predicted with such precision the coming of a revolution. I'm referring to different poems, but in particular, I'm thinking of Delam Baraye Baghche Misuzad. I feel sorry for the garden. As you might recall, it's a garden that is dying because neither the father nor the mother, nor the brother, nor the sister take responsibility for the welfare of the garden. And Farzaneh talks about how mortars and machine guns are being planted in gardens, how flowers are being replaced by armaments, how little children are filling their backpacks with bombs. But what I love about that poem is that at the end, she writes, I know the garden can be taken to a hospital. And she repeats, Midanam, Midanam, Midanam. I know it, I know it, I know it. This belief in nonviolence, this belief that we can be responsible and each of us has to take responsibility for the welfare of our garden. In the 60s was amazing. So the few examples I gave you of women who are becoming prophets and kings in their writings, I think is a harbinger of what we can hopefully expect for the future of our country.
Thank you. Another viewer writes, thank you very much for the talk. The idea of threshold literary production is very much connected, or so I think, to the translation projects. In other words, does it make sense to say that many literary productions by women, in this case Iranian women, would find their significance and impact only, mainly, if they are translated into other languages and thus manage to move across borders?
Absolutely, absolutely. And unfortunately, our government has never invested, either before or after the revolution, as much as it should on propagating works of translation. And the American publishing industry is obsessed with blockbusters. Of course, they're not interested in works of translation. Rare translators who are not interested in economic gains, who do it out of passion for the field, are doing great translations. But generally speaking, if you were to ask me, what are a few things that can be done to better expose the world to one of its treasures, Iranian literature, I would say translation. And that needs a lot of resources. Someone has to find professional translators, good publishers, good critiques, to make the world aware of this hidden treasure that is Iranian literature. Let me also add at this point that writing of women, Iranian women, now is no longer only in Iran. We have a large number of women writers who are writing in the language of the host country. throughout Europe, in Australia, everywhere, in every corner of the world.
Thank you. A viewer writes, as you said about holding the Quran by your mother, which most of us experienced, there's a tenderness and deep spirituality we see in women. Do you think this tenderness was misunderstood as weakness in women, and therefore we women started to hide in order not to be humiliated or to avoid shame?
Thank you again. These are wonderful questions and very nuanced in what they ask, and they really deserve a nuanced answer. And alas, we don't have the time to go into it. But I want to bring to the attention of this viewer who has asked this wonderful question that one of the reasons I was interested in women's writing, on one level, I have said it repeatedly, it was very personal. I found my voice in the writing of women. I found shelter and refuge in that writing. I found a portable home, a portable country in the writing of women writers. On some level, I identified with their feelings of being in exile. I was not an exile, but I was an immigrant living outside the country, and many of the women I studied were exiles in their homeland. But other than that, one of the other main reasons was that I was surprised at the representation of Iranian women in the West. I have always believed that although women have been segregated, although women in Iran for centuries, although they have not had access to the public arena and to public forms of art, they have been very powerful at home. And they have been an incredibly brilliant practitioner of private forms of art. Let me give you some examples. Scheherazade, the storyteller, who was, by the way, ultimate practitioner of politics. And, most books about her talk about her storytelling. In the West, as Fatima Mernissi has talked beautifully about it, it's mainly how she looked and what she wore and things of that sort. But Scheherazade was a strategist, was a political strategist, and very powerful. She's the one who tamed a murderous king who brought peace to her land. So women have always been powerful inside the home. And the reason I'm so excited about threshold literature is because it is allowing me, as a literary critique, it is allowing women writers as producers of literature to talk about this transcendence of binary opposites, that segregation or domination does not mean powerlessness or lack of agency. Women have always been very powerful inside the house.
Thank you. A few more questions. One viewer writes, is the struggle for freedom in choosing to wear the hijab part of the boundary breaking pattern that you mentioned?
I'm sorry. would you repeat that question? I didn't.
Sure.
Well,
No problem. The question is the struggle for freedom in choosing to wear the hijab part of the boundary breaking pattern that you mentioned?
absolutely. I have argued for 40 years that the right to present yourself to the outside world, your sartorial choices, are the prerogative of a woman and of a woman alone. No one can tell her to veil herself or to unveil herself. Both are infringement of the human right of an individual. That right is the basic human right of any woman, anywhere, anytime in the world.
Thank you. Another viewer writes, isn't Iranian women's literature itself a challenge to Iranian notions of Islam, in effect a Baha'i act? What about women's literature as religious subversion?
I referred a few times to Tahireh Qurratul Ain, who, by the way, unveiled her body and her voice in 1848, which is a monumental year in the world, and which is also considered the beginning of women's movements in the West. I wish and I hope more will be written about the significance of Badasht as a way to decenter whiteness, to decenter the West as a locus of women's movement. But having said that, my field is literature, not religious studies. I don't mean to evade the question. I believe there are women who feel very comfortable and very liberated in whatever religious expression they have. It's not only Baha'ism or Babism or Islam or Christianity or Judaism. Again, that choice is also the individual choice of any writer.
Thank you. Another question, a viewer writes, following up on the first question, are there differences between Persian women writers outside of Iran who write in Persian and the ones who write in the language of the exile country they are in?
What a fantastic question. And I have to say, I don't have an answer to this great question. I need to study it more carefully from this perspective. And I have to admit that thankfully, there are now so many wonderful books being written in all languages of host countries, and a couple of languages that I know. It's hard to keep up with, both the ones that write in Persian and the ones who write in other languages. But this is a great question, and I promise the person who asked the question that I will pay closer attention to this, and I apologize for not having the answer.
Thank you. We have lots of questions and comments coming in, a lot of comments thanking you for your research and for the talk. I want to read one comment and one question. A viewer writes, thank you, Professor Farzaneh Milani, for this thought-provoking and inspiring lecture, as usual. Your brilliant articulation of the concept of threshold in literature gave me an idea. I have been emphasizing in my analysis of feminism and women's movements in Iran and other countries on the concept of glocal. Do you think it is very similar to the reality of threshold in literature?
Absolutely, yes. Anytime that you acknowledge the existence of binaries, but you refuse to be prisoners of them, of one or the other. Anytime you stand at the threshold with the option to look inside and outside, to be local and global, that to me is a perfect example of threshold literature or threshold form of writing. I want to add here that it has been a source of great joy for me to go back and to read the poems of, in particular, two male poets of the classical era. I'm talking mainly about Rumi and Hafez. To me, if I have any understanding of the threshold, of this third space, of this space of creativity, their poetry is ultimate example of it. Rumi has a line that captures in one line what I've been struggling to explain. جنگ از داد است عمر این جهان، صلح از داد است عمر جاودان. Let me try a translation of it. The clash of opposites is as old as time itself. Reconciliation of opposites is paradise itself.